Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the agency-wide performance measures and the strategic plan session. My name is Patty Stengel. I'm a program officer with Senior Corps, and I will be moderating this session today. Before we get started, just a few notes. The CC button for closed captioning is on the left side of your screen. If at any time during the session you're having trouble hearing, please feel free to use that button. You'll also find the content button on the left side of the screen. There you can access the PowerPoint to place in your event bag for future reference, as well as the forum. You'll also see the green Q&A button. At the end of the session, we'll answer questions that have been submitted through the Q&A. So throughout the session, feel free to type your questions there. You can also ask any technical questions that you might have about the conference. We do have someone from Campaign Consultation on the line to answer those questions. If your question is not answered, you can ask it through the forum, which is also available through the content session. There you can post your question and then check back for an answer throughout the conference. And with that, I will pass this over to your hosts today, Kelly Griffin and Kathy Ferguson.
Hello, everyone. This is Kelly Griffin. I'm the Associate Director of Strategic Initiatives at the organization. And Kathy? And I'm also here with my colleague, Kathy Ferguson, who is in her day job, she's the regional manager in our Denver, Colorado office.
Good morning, everyone. This is Kathy. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Happy to have you on.
I thought maybe I'd
happy to have you on the
Kathy.
line. Sorry.
It's okay. So thank you all very much for joining us this morning for this session on performance measurement, not just for breakfast anymore. As they once said about orange juice and then later about beer, it's not just for breakfast anymore. This is not just something that we're doing. Performance measurement is not something that we're doing just, kind of on a whim once a year. This is really going to be moving forward. It's really going to be a big part of what we do at the agency, and I know it's a big part of what you all do in your programs. And so we're going to talk this morning a little bit about performance measurement at the agency and its origins in our strategic plan. So on June 30th, 2009, in President Obama's remarks on the Community Solutions Agenda, he said that the bottom line is clear. Solutions to America's challenges are being developed every day at the grassroots. Government shouldn't be supplanting these efforts. It should be supporting these efforts. He also said that instead of wasting taxpayer money on programs that are obsolete or ineffective, government should be seeking out creative, results-oriented programs and helping them replicate their efforts across America. And so, speaking of replicating these efforts across America, we're wondering if your organization, we'd like to put a poll out to you right now to open up. We're wondering if your organization has other non-CNCS funders that require you to report on results. And so we're going to put this poll up now. We'll give you a moment to respond. And results are coming in. So it looks like most of you have responded that yes, you do have other funders that require you to report on results. So that's good. You're probably quite familiar with performance measurement, and we're hoping that this session will be helpful for you to understand how CNCS is thinking about performance measurement. Now, one more poll before I continue. We're wondering how many of you have reviewed the Serve America Act, the Edward M. Kennedy Serve America Act. We're wondering how familiar you are with this. Give you another moment or so to register your responses. Okay, it looks like most people have responded. And it looks like just over half of you do have some familiarity with the Edward M. Kennedy Serve America Act of 2009. And that's great. So I'm just going to review it a little bit. So this act passed with strong bipartisan support in Congress in 2009, and it served to reauthorize existing CNCS programs, as well as bring national service to higher levels of impact, innovation, and effectiveness. Among other things, the law directs us to expand our opportunities to serve, to build the capacity of individuals, nonprofits, and communities, and also to encourage innovative approaches to addressing community challenges. The law put emphasis on measuring the impact of service in 6 priority focus areas that you might be familiar with, including disaster services, economic opportunity, education, environmental stewardship, healthy futures, and veterans and military families. The Act also added programs to CNCS, including the Social Innovation Fund, or SIF, and the Volunteer Generation Funds. And this law is the foundation of the corporation's strategic plan. So one more poll. We're wondering if your organization currently receives CNCS funding. This will help inform what we share with you here. Give you a moment to respond. I want to thank everyone for doing such a great job responding to the polls. We've got really great response rates here. And also, while you're answering, I wanted to remind everyone what Patty shared with you in the beginning, that you can always ask a question. You can ask a question at any time during the presentation using the button on your screen, and we'll do our best to answer your questions at the end. And then if there are any that we don't get to, we can also answer those privately. All right, it looks like most of you have responded, and the vast majority of people on the line currently receive funds from the corporation, so that's great. We're glad that you are, glad to have you in the family. So, the CNCS 2011 to 2015 strategic plan was developed through an extensive process. We did a lot of input gathering from the public, from current grantees and sponsors, from state-level stakeholders, from any number of people. Some of you may have been involved in some community meetings that we had a few years ago, or conference calls, webinars. All kinds of input gathering went into developing our strategic plan that was published in February of 2011. And the strategic plan includes our mission statement, goals that our agency must meet in order to accomplish the mission, action plans to meet each goal, and these are what we call our objectives, also strategies to meet each objective, and then performance measures for each of the objectives. Now, the strategic goals we talk about, we have 4 of them. Goal number 1, which we shorthand as our community impact goal, is to increase the impact of national service on community needs in communities served by CNCF-supported programs. Our second strategic goal, which we shorthand as member experience, is to strengthen national service so that participants engaged in CNCF-supported programs consistently find satisfaction, meaning, and opportunity. Our third strategic goal, we shorthand as capacity building, and this is to maximize the value we add to grantees, partners, and participants. And last but not least, goal 4 is regarding our own infrastructure, and this is to fortify management operations and sustain a capable, responsive, and accountable organization. So from our strategic plan, we derived performance measures. This was also an extensive process, and in our strategic plan itself, there are 42 priority measures, which is kind of a lot for an organization where performance measurement is new. And it's not, and I want to stress that we know that it's not new for many of your organizations. We know it's not a new concept. We know that we did not invent the concept of performance measurement. But as an agency, to have our mission be about measuring performance and doing so in a way that goes across all of our agency's programs is new for the corporation. And so very ambitiously in our five-year strategic plan, we had 42 of these priority measures. And so we decided that maybe we had bitten off a little bit more than we could chew initially. And we set about a process to focus our efforts in the first few years of performance measurement across the agency. And so we embarked on a process to get the 42 priority measures down to a subset of 16 agency-wide priority measures. And how we did this is we again collected input from stakeholders. We had extensive internal and external meetings about this. And how we chose the 16 of the 42 is we wanted to look at which measures enable us to tell the best story of national service. In other words, what measures really reflect the unique capacity of service to address problems. Also, we looked at where we had the most confidence about measurable impact, where we felt that we could really show that our service programs are what is making the difference in people's lives. And lastly, we also considered where our grantees and sponsors do most of their work. And when I say most of their work, I mean across the agency's programs where we do most of our work. Now, it's important to note here that we realize that this subset of 16 measures does not encompass everything that we do as an agency or everything that all of our grantees are doing. For example, those of you that are senior companion programs know that respite care is a really big part of what you do. Now, because that's only the focus of one of the agency's programs, a measure on respite care is not among the 16 agency-wide priority measures. But like I said, these are agency-wide and it reflects all of our programs. And so it's not that respite care is no longer important to the agency or to the senior companion program. It's that it doesn't encompass a large swath of what we do. So it's not unimportant, just different from the overall agency goals. And so one more poll. We are wondering if your organization has a system that allows you to measure programmatic results. By a system, we mean an IT solution. It could be low-tech, it could be high-tech. Do you have a way of capturing results of your programs? I'll give you all a moment to respond. Again, I thank you for being so responsive to these polls. It's great to see all the results coming in. Just give you one more moment. Okay, well, it looks like most of you have responded, and about 80% of you are in organizations that have a system that enables you to measure programmatic results. So that is terrific and very good news for us as we begin to collect and aggregate across all of your programs as well as other programs throughout the agency. Okay, so how we're going to be implementing performance measurement across the agency is that each CNCS program, so that includes, of course, Senior Corps, AmeriCorps, the Social Innovation Fund, and all of our other programs, are contributing to the 16 agency-wide priority measures as it is relevant to them. Each of these programs will also report on complementary program measures, and these complementary program measures reflect activities outlined in our program's statutes or other targeted program activities. And so the respite care initiative in Senior Companions is one example of important programmatic activities that will be captured in complementary program measures. And how we will be communicating this to our applicants, grantees, and other stakeholders is through our NOFOs and program guidances to provide the details of each program's approach. And so for those of you that are RSVP programs, you will have seen this just come out and recently released NOFO for RSVP. So what these agency-wide performance measures look like across the agency, this is a quick and dirty map. I apologize if it appears to be a vision test. It's not meant to be. It's really just meant to be a snapshot of how our major programs, how the agency's major programs are contributing to the 16 measures. And you can see that the Social Innovation Fund and VISTA apply to the measures a little bit differently because of the SIF's focus on evaluation and VISTA's focus on capacity building. They plug into the community impact measures a little bit differently, but programs like RSVP, Senior Companions, Foster Grandparents, AmeriCorps plug in, and NCCC plug in very directly. And I'd also like to mention, and again, you might not be able to read these specifically, but just a general comment about our agency-wide priority measures. We realized that they're really a starting place. We had to begin at the beginning. We had to begin where the majority of our programs are. We know that many of our grantees and sponsors have been measuring performance for a long time. But when we looked at how we were going to roll these results all together across the agency, we really had to begin at the beginning. We had to begin where we thought that a majority of programs could report so that we could get all the same information from all of the programs and put it all together, you know, for some big numbers of the story of national service. And so you'll notice that within these priority measures, there are some outputs, there are some numbers, and we know that this isn't the best practice, this isn't an ending point, it's just a starting point. So as our experience with performance measures evolves, we hope to be moving more toward outcomes. And we know that a lot of you are already getting outcomes, and we hope that you do share those with us in your reporting because we can learn from those and we can hopefully apply it across other programs and help other programs kind of raise the bar and get to a point where they're reporting outcomes. And then my very last slide, this is a similar kind of map, but just for the senior core, the 3 senior core programs. So you can see that FGP is focused more on education priority measures, and the Senior Companions program is focused more on health measures, and our SGP programs really run the gamut of all of our different community impact goals. So as my last act, before I turn it over to Kathy, I'd like to ask you one more poll about, as we're moving from the content of the measures to resources that will help you navigate these measures, we're wondering if some of you may be funded by multiple CNCS programs. So we're wondering if you get funding from, say, AmeriCorps as well as RSVP or the Foster Grandparent Program, or if you also have VISTA funds coming in. So this poll is open now. I'll give you a moment. And as the responses are coming in, another reminder that you can ask us a question using the button on your screen, and we will be getting to as many of those questions as possible at the end of the session. This is such a responsive group. We really appreciate it. Answers are pouring in. Well, it looks like most of you have responded, so I'm going to hand it over to Kathy Ferguson to talk to you more about CNCS resources to help you implement our performance measures. Kathy?
Thank you, Kelly. And again, good morning, everyone. It's great. I agree with Kelly. I think your responsiveness has been wonderful, and we have several hundred people on the line, so it's been great to see those numbers tally up. What we'd like to do at this point, and the reason we asked about whether you had multiple programs or not, is because in addition to this being new information around performance measurement and performance measures, mostly, as Kelly said, in the terms of the language, we know you've been measuring results for a long time with your programs. And if you're doing multiple programs and being funded through multiple sources of funding with the corporation, we wanted to make sure, number one, that we're aware of how many of you are in that situation. But secondly, we want to make sure you're aware of what resources are available to help you understand what it is we're talking about, what we're asking for, and also how we can support you best in that process. So what we're going to do now is spend a little bit of time talking about the training and technical assistance resources that are available to you around performance measures. And I think before we move off this first slide, the fact that we are all together virtually at this time is a great example of some of the new techniques that the corporation is trying to implement to not only be efficient and to make it more convenient for folks, but also to make sure we can get information out to you in the quickest, most efficient, and most supportive way possible. As you've heard already, the questions that you're asking, we'll respond to some of those at the end of the session. If there's not enough time, we're going to be able to respond to your questions and post the responses in the forum. And the materials are going to be available for a period of time afterwards as well. So we're hopeful that the different strategies we're using to support you in these efforts are ones that will help you be the most successful. And obviously, if that's not working, you need to let us know that as well. But we think you'll be pleased with what is available. Many of you, because so many of you on the line are current grantees of the corporation, you may be familiar with the resource center that is available that provides a myriad of resources for national service. And the resource center has been in existence for quite some time and has a range of information across all of the different programs that includes best practices, includes kind of strategies, definition information, tools that grantees and others have tested that have proven to be successful. So if it's not a resource that you've been using, we certainly encourage you to do so. So there are also new pages that have been posted to the Resource Center specifically around performance measurement, and that's what we wanted to highlight for you today. You see the web link that is up there. It's also available to you in the content section of the virtual conference. But for the performance measurement, excuse me, what you will see when you go into the performance measurement pages is an overview of the corporation's approach to performance measurement. And it presents in a visual way the relationships between the strategic plan goals and the performance measures that you just heard Kelly describe. And what you're able to do is by clicking on each of the goals, it'll show you which of the priority measures and which of the objectives are linked to those goals. So if you say, you know, there was something about things that are important around addressing issues, but I don't really remember what those are, you'll be able to go in and look at that alignment of the different resources and the activities in conjunction with the corporation's goals. So we don't expect you to remember these or memorize these necessarily, but the important piece is we know that the work that you're doing really does inform that national narrative and that national story, and we know that we want to be able to reflect that work to Congress and to other stakeholders, and that you want to be able to reflect that work to your sponsors and to your communities. So by being able to see the links between the goals and the priorities and the objectives, this is a very simple way where you can pull down that information, help share it with others, and use it as a resource in the way that best supports you. There's a complete listing of all the performance measures on the site, and it's listed not only across the agency, but also broken out by program. So again, our hope is it's a very quick resource for you to be able to access that and draw upon that as you need it. There are also a number of definitions that are connected with the performance measures, as well as tools and data collection instruments. Over time, as each of the programs comes online and gets more involved with the performance measures process, there will be different resources available. So if about 20% of you said you didn't necessarily have data collection systems, for instance, in place, or measurement systems that were in place. The hope would be this would be a place you could come and look and say, we don't have something in place, we're looking at options. What's already out there that people know is working well, and can we take access, can we make use of that? So this will be a good resource center for you. There are also some very specific modules, online training modules that are available for Senior Corps. And again, some of these are listed in the content section of the virtual conference, and others will be posted up here on the Resource Center so you can access those. Many of you have already reviewed these. In fact, several thousand people have reviewed the modules that have already become available. But we wanted, again, for new folks who are joining us who aren't familiar with the programs, or those of you who may not have had an opportunity to see these yet, we wanted you to be aware of them. The first is using the national measures to really demonstrate impact. How are we telling the Senior Corps story? And this is a module that focuses on that relationship between the performance measures that the corporation is using, how they relate to the work that all of you are already doing, and how we can take that information and aggregate it in a way that allows us to speak in a national way about the impact and the work that's being done. And for each of the programs, as Kelly described, There are certain activities that are required by law, and there are also activities that some of our programs are able to select based on what the local community needs are. So it's important to us that you have access to what the specific requirements are for your programs. So each of the requirements for the different programs also have separate modules. So you're able to go in and take a look at what do I really need to know for my program. These modules are very user-friendly. They don't take a lot of time to go through, so it can be something that's done on your own time and within your own schedule. Again, hopefully making it more accessible and easier for you to use. There's also a core curriculum that is being developed and will be available in the coming months. And this core curriculum is one that speaks to the larger performance measurement approach that the corporation is taking. So this curriculum applies not only to senior core, but to all of the programs of the corporation. So our intent with this curriculum is if anyone who is interested in doing business with the corporation, in receiving funding from either one or multiple programs, would be able to look at this curriculum and understand the concepts behind the corporation's approach to performance measurement, how we're approaching it, what we're doing, how as a grantee or as an applicant for funding, you can use this information to inform applications that you're submitting. And then also looking at what's the quality of the data that comes back. As Kelly mentioned earlier, the performance measures that you currently see are a starting point because we knew there are some restrictions and limitations around the ability to be able to collect data at the grantee level. Some programs are very sophisticated, have very sophisticated systems. Others are really just starting in this area. So as we're building out the ability to report against outcomes, that will often require more significant data collection. And one of the things we want to do is make sure we support you in the process of understanding, as I'm collecting data, what are the things I should be looking for to make sure that when it's collected, it's good data that we can count on. So if somebody comes back and says, prove it, you've already done the work and you've already set up your systems in a way that automatically does that. So we'll spend some more time, you'll hear more about this in the future as well. But the goal with the core curriculum is really to make sure you've got all the framework information about how to approach performance measurement with the corporation. We also think this material may be useful for your sponsors, maybe some of your site supervisors and your partners in the community. There are times when you're going to, as you know, you'll have to work with your stations where your volunteers are placed and have them be a part of the conversation about how you're talking about and collecting information about results. So you can also make use of this information as training tools for them so that they understand what it is you're being asked to do as well. So we hope you'll see this as a supportive resource for you. The final resource we want to mention at this point, which is one that we know if you're currently a grantee with us, you're very familiar with, and if you're not a grantee with us, we want you to know this is a great resource. We do have program staff located in field offices throughout the country who work with senior core programs as program officers and really are the first-line resource around the operations and oversight of the programs as well as performance measurement. I want to reassure folks at this point, corporation staff and the field staff have been working in preparing for performance measurement implementation for about a year now in a very intensive way. And earlier in 2012, all of the staff from across the country gathered together to go through the materials, to be sure they were prepared to represent the types of questions and concerns that they thought you all as grantees would have. And we've consistently been checking in with grantees and others across the country as new information rolls out to make sure we're on the right track and that they're prepared to support you. In each of the 5 regions across the country, there are specialists in the field offices who have been intensively trained around this, and all of the staff have gone through significant training as well, and that continues. So we want to make sure that folks are available to you, and if you have questions, your first line of information and defense around performance measurement will be your program officers. So with that, we hope that this gives you just at least a flavor of the resources that are available for training and technical assistance and to support you in that work, and also that the overall framework of performance measurement for the corporation and its link back to the strategic plan is a little more familiar to you now. If you do want more details around that, we do encourage you to review the Kennedy Service Act and also to review the resources at the Resource Center. And if those resources don't answer your questions, or if you have others you're not quite even sure how to frame, we encourage you to get in touch with our field staff as well. And with that, I'd like to open it up and turn it back to Patty Stengel, who will help us respond to some of the questions that you've raised during the course of the presentation.
Thank you. Okay, and as a reminder, before we start the Q&A, there are a couple ways that you can access the PowerPoint slides. You can click on the Content button on the left side of your screen and select File, and you'll be able to place the slides in your event bag to access later. You can also view them at the Senior Core 2.0 library in the virtual conference. So there are a couple ways you can review these slides. As far as the first question, are there going to be sample performance measures for directors to look at? Kathy or Kelly?
Okay, this is Kathy. I'll go ahead and answer that. There are performance measures that are available for everyone to look at, and those are posted and available. And there will also be, as you go through both the training as well as setting up applications in your programs as you get involved in performance measures, there is a process and a system in place that walks you through the performance measures. So if you're choosing one, it will automatically identify for you what are the related performance measures that go along with that. So if you're working in a particular focus area, for instance, or working on a particular goal, it will map out the performance measures that are related to that for you. So so that will be the probably the easiest way to get to that. And in the Resource Center, it does take you through a part of that process. And as you start using the eGrant system to enter the information, it will also take you through that process there.
All right, thank you. The next question. Prior to the conference, I took the performance measure requirements retired and senior volunteer program session. This wasn't originally identified as a part 1 or part 2. Is there now a second course to take?
This is Kelly. I can answer that question. I see that there are a couple of questions about that. The RSVP online module, really, it's only one module, but you can view it in parts. You can view it in part 1 or part 2. And so if you went through that training, there is not an additional training that you should be looking for. It's just that because the training is a little bit long, it's available to be watched in 2 halves.
Thank you. And the next question, are there specific performance measurement tools that will be recommended by CNCS?
This is Kathy. There are some tools that are going to be made available and that will be recommended. And we have been working with grantees as well as others in the field around what tools make sense, both in terms of content and also in terms of reasonableness. And what I mean by that is, are there tools that are available that can be used to capture the information that you want, but don't impose such a huge burden that they're impossible to actually use? So for each of the different programs, there are different tools being made available. We're also hopeful that just as we did several years ago when we implemented Programming for Impact, there are a number of grantees that had great tools for collecting information, and we're hopeful that we're still going to be able to call upon the expertise in the field to share some of those tools as well.
Excellent. The next question, is there any place where agencies can access evaluations from other agencies so we can learn how they measure their impact and learn from them?
That's a great question. This is Kathy. There is actually a government-wide website, performance measure. I think, and we'll post the actual link, but I believe it's performancemeasures.gov or performancemeasurement.gov. And as we talked about earlier, the implementation of performance measurement is in place across all of the government agencies. And at that site, you can look at some of the key federal agencies, the performance measures that they're using, and in some cases, they also post the requirements of their grantees and some of the results or evaluation tools that they've been using. We have been working in partnership with other agencies to try and make use of that information that's relevant to the work that all of you do, and we'll be sharing those as we find them, but there is a lot available online, and as we're starting to roll this out, we're also looking for those resources that we think will be most useful to our grantee pool in particular. So we will make those available, and we'll try and ensure as new tools become available that we're making you all aware of that.
Thank you. The next question, will performance measures or outcomes be used for our volunteers as well, such as how does formal volunteering improve different areas of their lives?
This is Kelly. I can answer that. Yeah. Most of the performance measures focus on the outcomes for beneficiaries. So, for example, do the beneficiaries of service, have they improved their housing situation? Do they feel more socially supported as a result of the service they receive? But we also have our member experience goals, our member experience performance measures. So what benefits are the service participants themselves experiencing as a result of giving service? So the answer is yes, we do have those, and they will be administered in a variety of ways depending on the program. It could be through a survey, it could be through the portal. There are various ways that programs will be collecting that information.
Thanks. And our next question, is CNCS working with software companies like Volunteer Reporter to update software in order to track the performance measures?
This is Kathy. We have not been working specifically with the external software companies to do that. What we have been doing, however, is building a reporting module into the current eGrant system that you're already using. So the idea would be, rather than having to report outside of the system, that you could continue to report in the same kind of process that you've been using with the corporation all along. So the module for Senior Corps is going live in September of this year of 2012. And what you will see is, for those of you who are doing your entry in your applications, is you'll actually be identifying your targets and the performance measures that you're going to be using as a part of your input process. And then on the back side of that, you'll be able to report against those in that same system. So we won't be asking you to go outside of the system. What we can do, because you only report to us on a certain basis, on a certain time basis, is certainly as that information becomes available, we can share what those expectations are. So if some of the external software makers are able or interested in making some of those modifications, they can do that. The challenge we have is folks use a lot of different providers for that. So our hope is we can keep it as simple as possible and at least provide you with the minimum reporting structures that you need to meet our requirements. And then if others are able to enhance or expand upon those, that's great, because that will make it easier on your end as well.
Okay, next question. Has the listing of service categories and definitions that was published in January 2012 now become obsolete? If so, where can we find an updated one?
This is Kelly. I can answer that. I wouldn't use the term obsolete. Many of those service categories, well, first of all, it depends on the program. It depends on the CNCS program on which you're going to be reporting performance measures. And also, most of those service categories have been represented in what we're calling now service activities or interventions. that more specifically describe the program, what your program activities are for a particular performance measure. And so you can find these in the eGrant system that Kathy was just mentioning. Once that area of eGrants, the new area, the performance measures reporting area of eGrants is open, you will be able to find the listing of the service activities in there when you're choosing your performance measures.
All right, thanks. All right, you mentioned we still have the opportunity to report on priority areas we're working in, but are not considered included in the strategic plan priorities. How will that work?
This is Kathy. It will work in a couple of different ways depending on which program that you are with. With RSVP, there's actually a component of the performance measurement structure or the requirements that does allow you to work or to report against and select measures or activities that are not part of the corporation's 16 priorities but are important within the community. So within that reporting module that we identified, it builds in a structure that allows you to capture that information there, because we know that that work's important as well, and we want to make sure that we don't lose that. For additional work beyond that, we're still working through what makes sense. There's a balance point of asking you to report in a new way that's targeted toward performance measures and understanding what the implications of that are for all of you around burden and so forth. So we're not adding specific additional structures in place requiring that you do that other piece right now, but we will be working with you to figure out what's the best way to capture that, because we know that a lot of the information that you currently capture is really important to a lot of different stakeholders. So I don't have a more precise answer for you right now. I just do want to say that we're very aware of that piece of it, and we're working in context with what the requirements will be in our system to make sure we can provide a way for that to happen without it being overly burdensome for you. And certainly as soon as we have more details around that, we will share that with you.
Thank you. For those in re-competition for RSVP who have certain restrictions about what they can discuss with their state offices, what resources are available for them to help develop performance measures?
Right now, this is Kathy. The resources that are available are the ones that we have been highlighting through this presentation that are available to everyone publicly. So if you're looking for the list of the performance measures, if you're looking for the definitions of what those mean, or for the requirements for each of the different programs, those are all listed at the Resource Center, which is the website we indicated a little bit earlier. And again, that's posted in the content section, and we'll make sure it gets reposted in the forum for all of you. But it's nationalserviceresources.org/NPM for National Performance Measures. And all of the information that is available around performance measures and performance measurement in the corporation for all of our programs can be accessed through that Resource Center site. So the information that's on the site itself, the links and connection points on how to access the modules, all of that information can be accessed through the Resource Center.
Thank you. And can you clarify for grantees when they will begin starting to implement the performance measures for each RSVP, FGP, and SCP? Can they begin now, or do they have to wait for a renewal?
The plan right now, this is Kathy, is programs will begin at renewal. And so for those that are in RSVP right now and renewing this year, as you know, as part of the competition, performance measurement is a component of that. And the idea in having folks start at renewal is we want everybody to be familiar with where we're headed and to understand around performance measurement, but both from the standpoint of kind of interrupting existing work plans and also, frankly, structurally, from a systems perspective, trying to make sure we don't lose the work that we've been doing before performance measure implementation. We felt it was the most fair and the least burden on all of you to have that process start at the beginning of the renewal of your 3-year cycle. So that is the plan for right now, and if you have more questions around that, I know there were some sessions yesterday, and there's also information that will be posted around that if you have questions, and you can talk with your program officer about that.
Is there a preview of the performance measure module for eGrants available now?
This is Kelly.
Yes,
yes, it is. It's available on demand in the main hall of the virtual conference.
Thank you. And the next question, we're being asked to have 25% of unduplicated volunteers in one service area. I'm not sure if I can provide 25% of volunteers in one project. Am I correct, or do you have any suggestions for me?
Sure, this is Kathy. As a former RSVP director, I understand what some of the thinking and challenges can be around this. I think what I would suggest around this is, as you think about it, at least as the question came through, it asked about having volunteers in one project. I think double check the language on that. Having unduplicated volunteers in certain service activities is really the intent, and having them be aligned in a particular way, which may or may not relate to one particular project. So I hope I'm not misinterpreting your question, but it may be a challenge and it may require a shift. And programs are very different depending on how they've been structured and what the community needs have been driving them to do. So our suggestion is that you take a look at that, you see what the reality is around that, how close you may be to that, and then based on that make some decisions about what makes the most sense.
Thank you. How can we access performance measures that might have been identified for other CNCS programs? They might be of use for other programs that we operate within my agency.
This is Kelly. I can answer that. Those performance measures that are relevant for each CNCS program will be available when the NOFOs or program guidances go out for those programs. And so on the Resource Center website that we've been talking about, and by the way, it's www.nationalserviceresources.org/NPM and then another / and home, the word home, HOME. If you go to that site, you can get a general sense of which of our programs are going to be reporting into the agency-wide priority measures, but the full picture of the performance measures for each of our agency programs will be available when, like I said, when the NOFO or program guidance for that program goes out. So the next one out of the block will be AmeriCorps State and National when the NOFO is released in the next few weeks.
Thank you. And our next question, it seems as though most of the performance measures only show outputs. How do we expect to tell a strong national story without reporting outcomes?
This is Kathy. That's a really important question and one that we're very conscious of. As Kelly mentioned earlier in the presentation, we know that we're all working toward outcomes. It's about the impact in the community, but we had to balance what are the outcomes that we think programs are achieving with what can programs actually report against and what can the corporation actually collect and aggregate across the work in order to tell the story. So this really is a starting point in time. As you know, the strategic plan covers from 2011 to 2015, and part of our process for performance measurement is not just to start with and end with the performance measures that are currently in place, but as we implement them, to be gathering feedback about what is reasonable and what is realistic. And over the course of time, as the ability for the corporation and for grantees to collect data toward outcomes increases, those performance measures are expected to also get modified and edited to reflect that increased ability to report. So this is really the start of a long-term implementation that will allow us to continue to speak to outcomes and build the capacity to be able to report against those outcomes as well.
Okay, and next, a follow-up question about Volunteer Reporter. Is CNCS working with software vendors to collect and collate the data collected via the CNCS tools?
This is Kathy. At this point, I am not aware of that work going on. And again, our expectation is that the information that will come in through our reporting system will be where that aggregated data goes. Again, we're willing to share what the expectations are and certainly to share information about what we're looking for, but we are not in a position to work with individual vendors to do that.
Okay, and our next question, you talk about how performance measures are being implemented across government programs. Why can't CNCS use measures from other agencies? Wouldn't that be easier?
This is Kelly.
Go ahead, Kelly.
I'm sorry. When the performance measures were developed, we did look at what other agencies were doing in terms of performance measurement. In fact, many of the definitions in our performance measures, in the performance measures instructions documents, do come from other agencies. And in fact, a little known tidbit, that is the reason why you may have noticed if you work in more than one area that our definition for economically disadvantaged is different in education than it is in, say, housing or financial literacy, and that's because the definitions we use in each focus area most closely correlate with the government agency that works in that area. So a lot of the education definitions come from the Department of Education. A lot of the health definitions come from Health and Human Services, for example.
All right, thank you. And we'll do one more question and wrap it up. So our final question, do you have an updated list of focus areas and their definitions? Where can I find that?
Again, this is excuse me. This is Kathy. The list of the focus areas, the 6 focus areas, are listed under the goal information. Again, on the resource site, there is depending on what you've looked at so far, that information is also listed in the strategic plan. So there are a couple of different places to find the focus area and the definitions and kind of what falls under each of those. And we'll make sure in the follow-up to post that information for you and be more specific about some locations.
Okay, and since that was our final question, any questions that were not answered will be posted to the forum, and if you think of anything as well that you'd like to ask, please feel free to post that to the forum as well.
And this is Kathy, just on behalf of both Kelly and myself. Again, we want to thank you for your time and attention this morning. These are great questions. There are a number of others that will make sure we get those answers to the forum for you. And please, again, feel free to call upon the program officers or to refer to the resources that are available both through the virtual conference, in the library, through the forum, and then which will be available afterwards. And don't hesitate, if other things come to mind, to please make sure you forward those on through your, again, program officers or directly. We also have an email address called performancemeasures@cns.gov. And you're welcome to submit those there as well, and we'll make that available to you in the follow-up materials too. So thank you very much.